Hey, hello everyone. My name is Everett Lott and I'm the Director of the District Department of Transportation. And on behalf of Mayor Muriel Bowser, welcome to Washington, D.C., the 24th Annual Bike Summit. We are excited to have you all in the nation's capital, especially during cherry blossom season. During the summit, we hope you have a chance to attend one of the mobile workshops led by some of our own DDOT staff. These workshops will show off some of our latest and greatest bicycle infrastructure that we've been working to implement over the past years, from our trails to our protected bike facilities to our neighborhood bikeways. And we are working vigorously to bring a network of safe bicycling facilities to life as we make the district a more sustainable and enjoyable place to live. At DDOT, we know that most people will only choose bicycling when there's a low stress and connected network of facilities for them to use. This means designing infrastructure to separate cyclists from vehicular lanes, connecting these bikeways to our wonderful trails, and making our trail connections easily accessible from neighborhood locations. In neighborhoods, it means improving our roadways to also prioritize cyclist safety and bikeway connectivity. By building these facilities in Washington, D.C., we've achieved the League of American Bicyclists gold level status in rankings of bicycle-friendly cities. And we're not done. Mayor Bowser has established an ambitious goal to add 10 miles of bikeways every year, with the goal of developing 200 plus miles of on-street bike facilities by 2040. And also building out a regional network to connect more neighborhoods with our best in-class bicycle infrastructure. Across this effort, we are grateful for the support of our partners like the League of American Bicyclists, who share best practices, acknowledges where we succeed, and point out opportunities to improve. We hope you enjoy your time here in Washington, D.C., and that you leave inspired and full of new ideas for your home cities. Together, we can all be a part of making bicycling a great way to travel in America. So thank you for visiting Washington, D.C., and we hope you experience a great Bike Summit.
Awesome. Well, thanks to Director Lott for that warm welcome. And hello, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone here in the eastern part of the United States, and good morning to our friends on the West Coast, and good evening to our friends joining from across the Atlantic. I'm Bill Nesper. I'm the Executive Director of the League of American Bicyclists, and it's my pleasure on behalf of the League's Board of Directors, staff to welcome you all to the 2023 National Bike Summit, coming to you from Washington, D.C., which is the ancestral homelands of the Nacotchtank, Anacostan, and Piscataway peoples. We acknowledge the legacy of this land's indigenous elders, past, present, and future, and find inspiration from the lands and waters that they have stewarded for thousands of years. The summit is not only going to be one of the largest summits ever, thanks to the League's great staff and our awesome presenters. We're offering a better hybrid experience this year for all of our virtual attendees and also for our in-person attendees for the core content of plenaries, breakout sessions, and some of the social events. Hope some of you are getting out on some of the virtual rides and the rides in person as well. We've aimed to bring, whether or not you're online or if you're in person, excellent opportunities to learn and share and have a little fun so that we can be much more effective in our movement. Thank you for being here and representing your neighborhoods, your workplaces, communities, and states. I also have to thank our incredible sponsors who have made this possible. Our platinum sponsors, Coes and SRAM, and our gold level sponsors, AARP, Eco Counter, the Federal Highway Administration, Lyft, and Sierra Club. Please check out all of the incredible sponsors and companies and organizations and engage with them on the FHWA Summit app and also here in person if you're here in DC. As I'm sure you've seen in our FHWA conference platform, we have an amazing lineup of speakers and sessions, so make sure you schedule out your days really well. These events that are being done virtually are being recorded. We also have a number of meetups and community conversations that have already started, so make sure that you're engaging and that the sessions in this hybrid format. So let's make sure that we make the most of this. All the plenaries and breakout sessions, including this one, are in Zoom, accessed through FHWA, and will be available on demand after the summit, as I just said. We recommend using Zoom to view these sessions and engage with one another and to ask questions. Use the Q&A and chat functions within Zoom. If you're in person, I think they've gone through how to ask questions there. In this session, we have a lot of great speakers, and maybe we'll get time for your questions. But make sure to keep the conversations going. We also have closed captioning, which is available in all the sessions. And once again, Stephen here with us signing in all the plenaries. The theme of this year's summit is Bike Revolution, We're at a critical time in our history. Last week, the UN governmental panel on climate change said that we have less than 10 years to make the necessary changes to stop the worst effects of climate change. That means now, not next year, not a few years down the line, but now is the time for that revolution. One that ensures that a better today and a better future for our families, our neighbors, our country, and our world. We know just how revolutionary biking is. Biking improves lives, strengthens communities, and makes our world a better place. But it shouldn't be revolutionary that people have the right to ride, that they should be safe and feel safe whenever they ride a bike, no matter where they live. But it is important. Sorry, I just lost my notes here for a second. But for decades, our communities have been built to prioritize drivers' convenience over people's ability to walk, bike, or roll. To this day, with only 10 years to prevent a climate catastrophe, the standard practice is to build streets that prioritize vehicle speed and reduce traffic congestion over people's safety, over neighborhoods' health and well-being, and over connecting communities, over everything, really. And we might think that we are, but we really aren't making good data-driven decisions on how these public investments, our streets, are providing return on investment to our lives, and that's what streets are, really, public goods that we pay for and should benefit all of us. Instead, the cost to us is tremendous. Just take the numbers. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says that the cost of motor vehicle crashes to American society is $340 billion annually. That's nearly 4 times the yearly cost that AAA attributes to congestion. That $340 billion is only the beginning of societal harm caused by crashes. When quality of life is factored in, the total cost rises to $1.2 trillion annually. But that's the data, and there's no dollar amount that captures the real human cost of the 42,915 people who died in traffic crashes in 2021, and the estimates are even higher for 2022. Because that is the true cost of car-centered design. That is the status quo in so many communities across America. That's why we want a revolution. We want to build communities that are centered around people, to reject the inevitability of traffic violence and death, to create safe and comfortable opportunities for people to walk, bike, and roll. Taking a sensible, safe systems approach to traffic safety is critical in reducing the loss of life, individual harm, and societal harm that we've built into the current system. It's hard work to create this kind of change. Everyone from our friends and neighbors to policymakers experience traffic congestion. So the perception is to that cost is really acute and personal. That's why we have to engage with others and to build a bigger, more representative team to show this movement is about transforming public space for people. We can and we must create opportunities to ride with decision makers, with community leaders, to work with victims of traffic violence, to together speak up for common sense investments to show this movement is about building more space for people to thrive. It's hard to overstate the incredible opportunity that we are in this moment in history, thanks to all you've done, all we've done together to secure federal funding for better transportation investments. All of us can be part of that shaping and directing this once-in-a-lifetime investment to build better communities where bicycling is safe, comfortable, and accessible to all. We should be very proud of what we've done together to secure this funding, like the Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary program that includes $5 billion over the next 5 years directed at regional, local, and tribal roadway safety initiatives with a clear safety focus. We're now seeing safety integrated more clearly in the operations and programming of USDOT. We're seeing safety articulated in speeches and recently in the president's budget proposal. So it's great. We have an awesome team, a once-in-a-lifetime team, really, so far at the USDOT. And that is the best ever at listening to and integrating transportation needs for all people. And in addition to that, we have the most funding ever. So we can and will do more at the federal level, but we have to work now to increase the pressure at the state and local levels to ensure that the projects that get built really reflect our priorities. It's too often that state departments of transportation will present plans that include the right policies and pictures and buzzwords. But oftentimes when you look in the details, what you're seeing are that we prioritize, are we seeing that the projects in there are prioritizing safe, equitable, active transportation? Usually not. I think you'll see that in most places that there's still we're still somewhat on autopilot, effectively digging a bigger hole thanks to the devotion to that status quo that we talked about, with building bigger, wider, more car-convenient infrastructure and sprinkling active transportation projects around the edges. That approach of that status quo is not a reflection of our stated priorities or the leadership at USDOT is showing at the federal level. The status quo isn't going to get us closer to solving the climate crisis as the clock ticks down. It's closer to ensuring no family loses a loved one to traffic violence, no closer to creating truly equitable, connected communities. It's up to us to say no more to the status quo, to demand this revolution, one that prioritizes people and streets for all of us. And it's up to us to hold our state and local agencies and elected leaders accountable, to prioritize safety and communities when it comes to how these public dollars are spent. So over the next few days, we're going to learn how advocates are shifting the mindsets and how people like you are making real progress to build better places, and you're going to be really inspired by the great work that's being done around the country, as we are. This work is only going to get done if we pedal together, and if we continue to work to show up at meetings, offering those classes, putting on those rides. This is a time for action. We are a people for action, and this is a tough climb, but we can do it. If we don't invest ourselves fully in this ride of our lives, it's simply not going to get done. So thanks so much for investing your time this week at the summit to share the best practices and to learn and to listen and to represent your neighborhoods, communities, and states in these sessions and on Capitol Hill on Wednesday. Together, we can go so much farther together and to build a bicycle-friendly America for everyone. So thank you so much. So with that, we just got to talk about this, this great team that we have. I'm really, really thrilled to be able to have to introduce you and have a chat, a bike-side chat, if you will, with Keith Benjamin, who is the Associate Administrator for Highway Policy and External Affairs for the Federal Highway Administration. He's one of these great leaders. So I'm thrilled that we can have him here today. He serves to advance the mission and goals of FHWA while working on with all transportation stakeholders, including members of Congress, state agencies, local communities, and other mobility users. He leads the Office of Policy and Government Affairs, which is responsible for a variety of critical and diverse topics, ranging from managing congressional affairs, housing FHWA's traffic and transportation performance data, collaborating with the intermodal community on new highway technology, transportation research, and program innovations, and performing studies and analyses of national transportation policy options. As a specialist with multimodal transportation background, Mr. Benjamin brings experience as a transportation professional in government, labor, and advocacy. He served as director of Department of Traffic and Transportation at the City of Charleston. That's where I first got to see his awesome work. And he formed the Federal Transportation Equity Caucus as a member of the policy office under USDOT Secretary Anthony Fox, and was a manager from our good friend organization, the Safer School National Partnership. Thanks so much for joining us, Keith, and being here for this chat.
Thanks so much for having me. It's good to be amongst friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I just want to, I have to start off by admitting that I follow you on Twitter, and I often get to, we see pictures of you and your family biking. I'd love to hear, just start off, what's your favorite place to ride in DC? Tell us about biking with your family.
So favorite for me is in my neighborhood. So I actually, both when my wife and I first got married, and we purchased our first home in DC, and when we came back, we've always lived in the Eastland Gardens neighborhood in Ward 7. And most people who pass right by that neighborhood don't even know that it's there. It's a historic African American neighborhood that was built by Black craftsmen between the 1920s and 1950s. A lot of people go back there because of the Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens. But we love it because one of the reasons why we love it is we can literally take the trail straight to Bladensburg Park and further, or we could take it the opposite way. I can ride from my house to the back end of Georgetown with no problem. And so we love the fact that we're able to easily access the trails that Director Lott was speaking about, and be able to ride back and forth all the time. And so biking for us is a normal practice for us because it's so easily accessible for us.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I we're inspired by those photos, and it's nice to see. As I was saying, you have such an amazing team there, and your own riding, like you said, you're among friends. It inspires us.
Yeah.
So the National Roadway Safety Strategy was a big step by DOT to say for the first time that the only acceptable number of traffic deaths is 0 in this country. How do you square the current crisis with the levels of traffic deaths, which even as overall fatalities are leveling off, bicyclist and pedestrian deaths continue to increase?
Yeah, it's a real thing to have to navigate. You know, safety remains the department's #1 priority. It's the first thing that our administrator, when he came on board, immediately started jumping into and wanting to know more about, even with the unfortunate tragedy that happened in Maryland about a week and a half ago. Over the weekend, there was emails flying, communications and otherwise about missteps and otherwise. And so we're really adamant that safety is a major aspect that we want to be able to address. And the secretary has been clear that in so many other areas, the goal of getting to 0 is well accepted. But when it comes to deaths on our public right-of-ways, you know, it's constantly a number, and we don't want it to just be a number. We want it to be something that's directly addressed. And that's why the National Road Safety Strategy is so important, and why over a year ago, the secretary stood up to say, hey, we need to make that goal. And then this year, back in February, being able to bring allies together and say, hey, we need a call to action. And so I do want to make sure I give my gratitude to the league for stepping up and being one of the first to join that call to action, committing the work to the states and their required vulnerable road user assessments and helping applicants with the new safety grant programs. Both of those actions are important for us because it gives various new incentives to prioritize safety through the bipartisan infrastructure law. We know we have a long way to go, but one of the things that, and we'll talk throughout this morning with both myself and colleagues, and know the Assistant Deputy Secretary of Policy, Christopher Coes, is on, and others will get into this, but it's important in federal highway, we believe, not just for the dollars that are going out, but the design considerations and improvements with our guidance that's going out as well. And so when you think about things like our resurfacing, restoration, and rehabilitation projects guidance that has not been touched since the 1980s, right? When you think about the bike ped guidance that we hope to be able to get out soon, these things are important because as somebody who is a local practitioner, our leverage sometimes starts with design. Like, how are we utilizing our public right of ways to enforce safety, not just new ideas, dare I say, but best practices about how the public right of way should work for all users, but most especially in this conversation for cyclists and pedestrians. And so it's something that we are very much committed to. We know we need you all's partnership and making sure that we're addressing the urgent concern as it pertains to the deaths and fatalities and injuries that are happening on our roadways.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. And we're really proud to be doing that work as well, you know, and doing what we can to, help. But if we continue to see, you know, vulnerable road user deaths increase over the short term, you know, I mean, how should we judge, you know, how do we judge the strategy, you know, as it being successful? Like, you know, how should we be prepared for, you know, our and like how you're measuring it on the short term?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you mentioned in your opening that was important was how the empowerment is transferring down on the local level, right? There's sometimes disconnect when it comes to safety and priorities as it pertains to what it looks like once it's on the ground. And prioritization of vulnerable road users is an important piece of that, and what state programs are investing in, how that relates to localities and bridging that particular gap. And we feel that the bipartisan infrastructure law has done a number of things in that regard, and I'll highlight those, but then I'll put it into an example that I experienced when I was leading locally. But with the bipartisan infrastructure law, I really believe it brings three things to the table for localities that are very much different. This opportunity to lean heavily into planning, to take advantage of new thought processes around design, and also access the funding to actually implement, not just have thoughts and ideas and not just advocacy, but actually to be able to implement specifically when it comes to our cities, our counties, our MPOs, and our tribes. And Federal Highway definitely wants to help, right? When you think about the vulnerable road user safety assessments that all states must do by this fall, there's specific stipulations in there about stakeholder engagement. That means y'all, right? That means the advocates that are on the ground. When you think about the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the requirement for states to spend at least 15% of their HSIP money on pedestrian and bike safety, the fact that Congress put language in the bipartisan infrastructure law where TAP programming can no longer be unceremoniously just transferred out, that it has to be applied to bike ped or be conducted through a competitive process before such a request is submitted. Or as you mentioned, the Safe Streets for All program, which I think is a major opportunity both on the planning and implementation side. The Secretary just a few weeks ago announced more than $800 million in grant awards for the first round of funding that has 473 action planning grants and about 37 implementation grants. So that moving the needle, but also like where we're getting the feedback, like where are those best practices happening on the ground. And so a couple of months ago, we had put out this safety RFI that was seeking public comment specifically about how Federal Highways thinks about design standards and regulates that through our Complete Streets Network's thoughts and otherwise. And we got a lot of responses back from that, and we're hopeful for that to be incorporated in. And so I think there's this key opportunity that we're in, right? And a lot of the headlines are about the funding, and it should be, but this three-prong approach with the planning opportunities, the design, and the funding are critical, right? Not every community is ready for capital, but they need a couple of dollars to be able to like bring the people they have together, bring the thoughts and ideas together to begin to build this venture sorts of projects. And I was in that situation in Charleston. One of our most dangerous intersections in our downtown, we ultimately were able to introduce the first protected bike infrastructure in the city's history. But it was on a state-owned right-of-way. In South Carolina, 97% of the roadways are owned by the state DOT.
Yep.
And so every decision that I would have to make would have to be in coordination with the state entity. But because we were able to lean into some design pieces, both from the federal government and from some local precedents, because that intersection of concern happened to be in the tax improvement fund district, we were able to come to the state, not just with thoughts, but with a plan and with funding to be able to properly negotiate what we wanted to see, because ultimately the citizens were coming to us and saying, fix this. We want access. We want connectivity to healthy food. We feel unsafe when we're crossing the street. How can we have that piece happen? And ultimately we were able to build that out and actually have the state DOT build the project for us. And so this opportunity through the bipartisan infrastructure law, not to just give tools on public engagement or how to advocate, but to be able to say, here are dollars to plan, here are best practices around planning, and also here are some movements that we're making around design considerations that give credence to appropriate bike and pedestrian infrastructure, is that kind of three-prong approach that we feel is going to be helpful for empowering local communities to actualize their thoughts and ideas into implementation.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I really appreciate your, it's again, back to the team and sort of having that, having that local sort of approach. I really appreciate the what you've just laid out, and I know we at the local level really need to do what we can to help make that happen. And thanks for doing what you can to help bridge that gap to ensure that those funds get into safety projects. One of the 5 objectives of the National Roadway Safety Strategy is safer speeds. Tens of thousands of people commented on the speed limit setting for the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, in 2021. Can you share with us how safer speeds will be pursued and implemented?
Well, I'm in an interesting space. I can't say too much about the MUTCD since it's an open rule, but it is something that is a priority for us to have to address. There's a lot of comments we were able to get in about the MUTCD, and we're hopeful to move that forward. As probably many people listening in know, there is this statutory deadline of May to be able to respond on the 11th, and we're moving forward in that regard. And that includes the emphasis on speed limits and how we're moving forward with safer speeds in the public right of way. One of the things that I do think was important that came out of the bipartisan infrastructure law is the stipulation for the MUTCD to be updated at least once every 4 years. And for those who've been a part of this work for a long time, the timeline between one MUTCD and another is so distant. All the best practices, the improvements, the ways in which people at the local level have been able to move the needle, especially around biking and walking, don't get reflected, even as you're trying to get progress, right? But yet and still the MUTCD utilized as the baseline for a yay or a nay. And so just as we are moving through the 11th edition and obviously wanting to move, get to that statutory deadline, the turnaround on the 12th edition is a big conversation for us as well. And so we're hopeful that that distance between the release of the 11th and also moving forward with the 12th will definitely move concurrently.
Got it. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll stay tuned on that. So I just have one more question for you. One of the programs, I talked about, the climate crisis. We all know, we saw that IPCC report that came out. One of the programs we're excited about in the bipartisan infrastructure law is the carbon reduction program, which is going to be providing $6.5 billion to states, $1 billion, that's with a B, right? Over 5 years. And whose guidance emphasizes a mode shift towards biking, walking, and micromobility. Can you tell us more about that program and what kind of projects it will be used to fund? Yeah,
we're excited about that program to have had now, because of the 2 fiscal years, 2 apportionments that 2 sets of apportionments that have gone out to states around the carbon reduction program since the enactment of the bipartisan infrastructure law. For those that are not familiar, just to build on what Bill said, the decarbonization of the transportation sector. So it is definitely one of the tools in the toolbox for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And so when you talk about eligible projects, you're talking about on and off road trail facilities for pedestrians and cyclists. You're talking about non-motorized forms of transportation, as well as projects for the deployment of alternative fuel vehicles and micromobility, right? And e-bike infrastructure and projects as well. And so there's a plethora of opportunities when it comes to pedestrian and bike options within the carbon reduction program. I think one of the things that I do want to raise, if you we're taking some notes earlier, I mentioned the Transportation Alternatives Program has specific stipulations in HIP for not being able to be transferred out. Carbon reduction program is a little bit different. Congress does have language within the letter of the law regarding the carbon reduction program that allows states to transfer out of that program. And so one of the things I do think it's important to bring to the table here is, as local advocates, bringing those projects, those opportunities to the table when you're working with the states, right? Making maximizing that value of those dollars, not for other pieces, but for what was intended within the program, the carbon reduction program itself, right? And so just want to stress that there is flexibility that states have on the transfer side, but I think it's imperative as local communities to have your list of approved, prioritized, work with your MPO of projects that you want to see move forward so you can make sure that these dollars are utilized for their intended purpose.
That's really great advice. Thank you so much. I just want to, I want to make a plug. You mentioned, and for all of you, the listening, Keith mentioned being able to come up, with that plan, having that plan, part of having the funds to give communities technical assistance and to help them access the federal funding. It's really, really important to have a plan. So tomorrow morning, we're going to have a session on technical assistance from several agencies throughout the government to help local governments apply and be awarded federal grants. So just a plug for tomorrow morning session. That's on at 9:30 in the morning tomorrow in person. Keith, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your awesome work. Really, really appreciate what you're doing and taking time today and continue your leadership where you are. Keep it up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who's listening.
So continuing on that theme of federal leaders at USDOT doing great work, I'm excited to introduce to you Christopher Coes, who serves as the Assistant Secretary for Transportation Policy in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Transportation Policy. Christopher previously served as Vice President for Land Use and Development at Smart Growth America, as a Senior Fellow at the Brookings Institute, and also professor at George Washington University and Deputy Director and Senior Advisor for the Transportation for America campaign. Christopher, thank you for so much for being here and joining us today.
Thanks, Bill, for having me.
Yeah, over to you.
Well, Bill, first of all, it's a really honor to join the League of American Bicyclists today, and I'm really excited to join my colleagues, not only Associate Administrator Keith Benjamin, but also my great team and partners, Emily and Sherry, who many of you will hear before. Just to note, much like Keith, I come back. My previous life has been supporting a lot of the active transportation work across the country. Previously was serving as one of the steering committee members on the partnership for active transportation. One of the things I'll also say here in the limited time we have, one of the things I would note that, you advocates have been working for years to make the case for investments in infrastructure that better supports active transportation, particularly biking. We saw, all of us, what happened during the pandemic when more people across the country chose to bike and walk. It showed us that people really do want to have a more active lifestyle. We also saw, from an economic standpoint, communities that had a multimodal system, particularly in active transportation, had higher economic resilience, but also we saw lower health impacts and made those communities more resilient from a health standpoint. But we also know that there is also an issue around climate crisis, as you mentioned, Bill. And we know as an administration, investing in active transportation is a way to address the 57% of transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions. Getting to net zero is a economy-wide, a whole of government, whole of country priority, and we're really excited that all of you have joined into that cause. When I came in the administration on day one, our goal was to not only meet the pandemic, but also think about what would a new transportation authorization look like. And one of the things that we are really excited about, that the bipartisan infrastructure law really signals some of our key values. Number one, investing directly in communities was a priority, with the creation of several new discretionary grant programs targeted to local governments. For example, as Keith mentioned, we have now the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, a $5 billion dedicated to addressing the crisis that we have on our roadways, but also a new program called Reconnecting Communities, which is designed to reevaluate existing infrastructure that may actually be creating economic barriers, as well as other public health and other disadvantages, and have the opportunity for those local voices to propose local solutions like active transportation. And of course, many programs that many of you have been huge supporters of, like the RAISE program. Just as important it is to focus on complete streets as making our community safer, and we're really excited that the new law, the bipartisan infrastructure law, included new not only resources, but guidance to ensure that state DOTs and MPOs are prioritizing complete streets in the communities. DOT and this administration, in addition to ensuring that we meet our economic and our safety goals and our climate goals, but we're equally committed to our equity and laying the foundation and groundwork to eliminate transportation-related disparities. As of now, as you know, over 69% of the bipartisan infrastructure law, about $446 billion, are allocated through formula. We at the Department of Transportation recognize we needed to work in partnership with state DOTs and MPOs, and we recently concluded a survey of those grant recipients on how they are approaching qualitative equity screenings or inclusion of representative individual voices in their development of their state transportation improvement plans or their regular MPO tips. Through this effort, we recently put out a new public involvement guidance to better educate, better provide best practices to MPOs and to state DOTs on how to ensure that we have diverse voices, to ensure that underserved communities have equitable access to not only discretionary funding, but particularly our formula funding programs. As Keith noted, safety continues to be the department's North Star. And safety continues to be a major strategic priority. But let us be honest, as Keith mentioned, we had over 43,000 individuals die on our roadways in the last year, even during a pandemic. And when you peel back the onion, you recognize that disproportionately, those deaths are happening in our rural and our tribal and underserved urban communities. And it's an imperative, if we are going to expand active transportation, if we're going to meet our climate goals, to create more revitalized, reconnected communities, that making sure these investments are targeted to rural, tribal, underserved communities is a huge imperative. And it's really exciting. In the last 2 years, we have actually, as part of the Justice 40 initiative, and for folks who are not familiar with that program, it's a presidential level initiative to encourage each agency who has resources to support our overall climate crisis framework to dedicate over 40% of not just the investments, but actually the benefits to disadvantaged communities. And I'm really pleased to note that of our initial metrics to date of our Justice 40 commitments, we are in striking distance of achieving Justice 40 in all of our 40 Justice 40 programs in those historically disadvantaged, marginalized communities. Now, recognizing that, we are working in hand to ensure that the Justice 40 program not only applies to our many discretionary grant programs, but working closely with our state DOTs and MPOs on thinking about how we can incorporate Justice 40 in our formula programs to ensure that we see increased number in bike and pedestrian projects in those communities that are not oftentimes at the table. Now, one of the things I have been in my previous life providing technical assistance to local government, to active transportation partners, is that while you may have a lot of funding that is trying to meet this historic moment, we recognize as the federal government that sometimes money is not enough. And so we are really excited. Starting in FY22, we launched what is called the Thriving Communities Initiative, which is really to help those underserved and marginalized communities to improve their access to federal resources through direct technical assistance and capacity building. For everyone here to continue to do the work, we must also elevate diverse voices. And that's what the Thriving Communities Initiative seeks to do. Now, as a fellow bicyclist myself, as someone who has worked with many of you on these issues and in my prior life, we also must recognize to meet the moment and to meet the moment for the future, we have to also look within our own organizations to ensure that we are opening the doors. Here at DOT, 67% of our staff are at retirement age. And so we are really working right now to ensure that we're recruiting great talent like Keith, like Emily, like Sherry, across all the communities. And we must also expand our coalition building, continue to educate people on the importance of investing in active transportation, particularly by infrastructure. Look, there's nothing more that I can say than you guys continue doing the great work that you've been doing for the last decade and plus. And I really look forward to working with the League on helping this administration and this department and our secretary move closer to making active transportation a reality for every American community in this country. Bill, it's a really pleasure to have this conversation with you, and I'll turn it over to you and our great panelists to continue the conversation.
Thanks so much, Christopher. I think the theme has been the great team, and I really appreciate, we all appreciate you and send out our thanks to you and to Keith for your remarks today, and then also for this continued work that you've laid out. And then we get now, we're fortunate to have presentations from two more of that great team. First up, please join me in welcoming Sherry Schaftline, who's the director of the Office of Human Environment at the Federal Highway Administration. Sherry has 35 years of public service experience spanning tribal, state, and federal governments and the nonprofit sector. She has held leadership positions at FHWA in the Office of Planning, Environment, and Realty for 16 years. Currently, as the director of the Office of Human Environment, she supervises 3 teams with responsibilities for financial oversight of the office research programs, advancing multimodal connectivity by addressing bicycle and pedestrian networks, micromobility, environmental justice, community impacts, equity, and economic development, accelerating project delivery through application of context-sensitive design principles, and implementing the Transportation Alternatives ATIIP and Scenic Byways programs, and administering procedures and standards for modifying the National Highway System and Strategic Highway Network. Thank you so much, Sherry, and it's over to you.
Thank you. Let me start sharing my screen here. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, and I just want to thank Christopher and Keith for their leadership. It makes it a lot easier for all the staff at Federal Highways and USDOT to do our work when we have those kinds of leaders trying to help us address active transportation. I also want to acknowledge all the Federal Highway folks that are in the room. We're doing this hybrid, so I'd hope that the Federal Highway folks here could stand up in whatever room they're in so their conference mates can see them and connect with them, and acknowledge that we have several Federal Highway and USDOT people on listening in as well. And what I'm going to describe here is produced on their backs, and we thank them for all their contributions. I feel like as a professional, the bike gears have never aligned better right till right now with administrative direction, congressional policy and funding, our initiatives, programs, design guidance, and technical assistance to do what's on this slide, and that is to build out an equitable bike network. And we have the opportunity to, at scale, increase bike networks in urban, suburban, and rural areas right now. And I'm going to close with this slide too, and I'll need folks to tell me, and participating in the summit, do you have the resources, the tools, the ability to help build out your bike network? What else can we do to help? To build out an equitable bike network, we are clearly going to have our safety information. We have to deal with the disproportionate impacts to minority populations. We have to make sure that we are building a network that allows people to access the destinations that they want to go, and that we are building it comfortable and convenient so that it's an all-user, all-ability network. In the gray shaded area below, you'll see, thanks to the work of many people, we have a small but mighty program getting started that specifically focuses on building out a connected active transportation facilities network and an active transportation spine. So let's talk about some of the direction and leadership direction from the administration. You heard Christopher talk about Justice 40. Let's look at the programs that we're going to be trying to figure out a bicycle and pedestrian methodology to describe those benefits. The CMAQ program has, of course, bicycle and pedestrian facilities. The carbon reduction program does. Transportation alternatives program does as well. And these formula programs are a little more difficult to develop a methodology around, but as we're going to try to use national available data and make some assumptions and some assessments and try to get some estimate of benefits. And it's really going to be based around looking at health benefits, mortality reduction, and direct emissions reduction from displaced vehicle emissions from bike and pedestrian trips. A lot of our strategic planning work at the DOT and Federal Highways is tearing down from a number of executive orders to develop sustainable and an equitable transportation system. And you'll note from the National Blueprint for Transportation Decarbonization that active mobility, convenient active mobility, combined with improved community design and land use so that we are able to make a lot of short trips. A lot of the needs that we need to address are nearby or co-located, will bring down the number of trips and carbon. And some of the performance measurements that we're dealing with, for example, we're trying to increase the person trips by transit and active transportation and increase it from 4 to 6%, a 50% increase. We're trying to reduce the cost burden of transportation. And even in Federal Highway Strategic Plan, we have a goal to enhance land use planning to make it possible to take fewer trips. So all of this is tearing off the executive orders and the strategic plans that are guiding all the work that we're trying to do. We have Congress's expression of directing us with regards to complete streets. I encourage folks to look at our complete streets report to Congress. We are 2 years into implementing this, and all of the offices within Federal Highways are engaged, and we encourage you to go to our website, and we are posting some of that information in the conference app. So please take a look at that and see our efforts to address safety, our efforts to address the adoption of standards and guidance, and making complete streets a default approach. We recently completed a national survey of all 50 states on where they kind of are benchmarking on implementing complete streets. And we'll be sharing that publicly, and we'll be using it internally to try to focus our resources on the states that are trying to improve their maturity in implementing complete streets. And I would note that regarding the guidance, every time anything's moving through Federal Highways or US DOT, we are making sure NOFOs, guidance, it all has complete streets elements in that guidance as it moves forward. So keep an eye on every new thing that comes out of Federal Highways should be integrated and reflecting complete streets progress. I would note the section on vulnerable road users. The highlighted area of this, in addition to the safety element, is the promotion of bicycling and walking. So we are in the process of moving that through internal approvals and getting our research plan to Congress. It kind of sets the tone for a lot of the work going on within our agency to advance these outcomes that Congress wants. Now let's turn our attention to some of the non-traditional places where we're going to be able to get bike networks funded. I would take a look at the Reconnecting Communities program. It recently was announced, and there's a very nice storyboard. There's nice summaries of the projects there. I think it behooves everybody to kind of look through all the things that we're funding, look at the notice of funding opportunities, talk with the folks that have been successful, and try to see what you can transfer to projects that you are trying to work on with your partners locally to try to get some of these funding. All 6 of the capital projects have a biking improvements associated with it for the recently announced Reconnecting Communities. About 16 of the 39 planning grants mention bikes, active transportation, multimodal connections. Take a look at our report to Congress that we recently posted on capping and removal. GAO has a report on the topic that's in progress. And what's really important here is the public involvement that needs to be part of all of this. As we make these improvements and we increase the value to the community, we want the existing community to be able to live there and enjoy those benefits and not be priced out of the market. So there's a lot of connection with HUD and housing and land use associated with this work now that you see in the NOFOs. Also take a look at our bridge program, where we have a $40 billion program where we replace and rehab bridge decks. Provides a great opportunity to accommodate bikes and peds if it's allowed at either end, and it can be done at a safe and reasonable cost. Keep an eye on the neighborhood access and equity new program. It's available at $3.2 billion over the next couple of years. A new solicitation for reconnecting. Well, second round of that will come out along with the neighborhood access. And neighborhood access is kind of a combination of reconnecting communities along with a lot of the language in ATIP. So again, another great opportunity to work with reconnecting communities and building out your bike network. Take a look at RAISE and infra. These are mostly highway related, access to ports, larger big ticket projects that people need help with. But as you scan through all of those, many of them have references to improving bike and pedestrian network. Noted here in the yellow highlights, the Cincinnati projects dealing with gaps in the regional bike path network. For North Baton Rouge, again, improving bike and pedestrian networks, building on a master plan that 70 community organizations were involved in. Great opportunities to build out your bike and pedestrian network. Now, with some of these programs like Raisin, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis. And the cost-benefit analysis has been updated to include active transportation modes. And it deals with looking at the health impacts and the reduction in mortality risk and monetizing that. And it is sensitive to making improvements. And you can see in projects where you're getting that integrated, it's a positive, and those projects are successful because they've tried to be multimodal. We're going to be working with AASHTO here pretty soon to just host a workshop on how to address and learn about the health benefits component of our benefit cost guidance. Now let's just dive into just real quick a little bit of the selection criteria. And this is just common to any of these discretionary grants you're going to see. You're going to see this kind of language: ensure equitable investments, decrease existing disparities, consider key population groups, include public involvement in the underserved community, achieve safety benefits while preventing unintended consequences for persons living in the jurisdiction, doing an equity analysis. The same kind of language is in every single NOFO that we're issuing, slight variations on a theme. We're integrating in all the smart technology, mobility, innovation kinds of grant programs. Wanted to highlight those as well. This just recently was announced, the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Smart Grants program. You'll see that there's funding for passive detection technology for bikes. Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority is going to be trying to track and collect information on front-mounted bike racks. There's a whole lot of funds in this program going to curbside management and curbside inventory. We all as bicyclists know if we can manage our curbs better, we reduce a lot of bikers that have to get out into traffic. This table that we update periodically is getting harder and harder to read as a slide, and that's a good thing. That means we're adding more eligible activities on the column there. And then we're adding more programs on the top row for which those activities are eligible in a wide variety of programs. So I really encourage you to take a look at this and use that as a point of discussion for how you might fund some aspects of your bike and pedestrian network. And real quick, just a couple elements of the planning activities that are going to make it easier to do bike and pedestrian planning. We want to make sure that we have equitable and proportional representation at the table from the very beginning. The MPOs are using the state of the practice with all the virtual public involvement. And right now we have issued that the MPOs can use 2.5% unmatched of their funds for advancing complete streets plans and activities. Keep an eye on these two new programs. With planning pilot programs over the next year, we'll be working to improve the project prioritization process and be thinking about how we can acquire and provide data sets that will help with accessibility evaluation. And I really encourage folks to go to our publicly available 24/7 updated STEEP tool. It is the screening tool for equity analysis of projects. You can go in there as a non-expert and put a lot of attributes about the equity elements of your community, draw boundaries, and look at some options of benefits and who they would accrue to help you with your equity analysis. I really encourage folks to keep an eye on what we're doing with equity and roadway safety. We have a webinar series starting. We've got a training program that our resource center has put together, a 2-day training program. This event's coming up in April, where we're really trying to deal with the disproportionate impacts issue and what we can do in safety to address that. I'm going to close here with just a couple elements related to research and equity. The states are very much leaning into trying to address equity. Over 16 projects of the NCHRP funds are addressing equity. I just wanted to highlight the one here that deals with active transportation. to keep an eye on. The results will be coming out this year. And then finally, we've made several $1 million of funding to university transportation centers. On the right is the one researching specifically pedestrian and bicycle safety, but all those on the left are also dealing with sustainability and mobility innovation and multimodal aspects as well. So I'm going to close with, this is what we want, and we look forward to working with you all to achieve and expand equitable bike networks. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sherry. And now please welcome Emily Schwenninger, who serves as a Senior Policy Advisor for Transportation, Health, and Safety in the Office of the Undersecretary at USDOT. There at USDOT, she's promoted health and safety through the launch of the National Roadway Safety Strategy and the launch of the Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary grant program. Additionally, Emily leads coordination for the USDOT COVID response team and other health-related initiatives at the department. Before joining USDOT, many of you might remember Emily from when she was Deputy Director of Thriving Communities, a program of Smart Growth America. It's so great to be with you today, Emily.
Thanks for having me, and great to see you here, and really privileged to be part of this conversation. I'm gonna share quickly my screen, so just please let me know if there are any problems with that. But I wanted to take the time that I have today to talk very quickly. You've already heard a little bit already about the National Roadway Safety Strategy and Safe Streets and Roads for All, but I just wanted to dig in a little bit. First of all of you are familiar, I'm sure, speaking to some experts here on what we're seeing on our roadways as far as the rise in fatalities, and we will be seeing FARS data updated soon, and so we'll have a better understanding of what's happening currently. But this has really created some urgency around the issue of understanding what exactly is happening, who's being impacted, and particularly as we think about, as the department thinks about who's being disproportionately impacted and carrying the overburdened by this issue and crisis. So we recently released some data visualizations around this. You can see this heat map here, and if you zoom in, you can see all of the FARS data points, which are these are fatalities, crashes that cause fatalities across the country from 2016 to 2020. So using that database, we then have been able to slice and dice and get a more specific picture or understanding of where this crisis is really unfolding and who's being impacted the most. And so I encourage you all, for those who are not familiar with it, to take a look at it and to see. We are in the it is an iterative process. We've released this original story map, and we're looking forward to being able to add to it and create more maps in order to better understand where our problems are. For example, in some of the, we've heard referenced, the information around the historically disadvantaged communities. And here you can see it at a census tract level, and then see layered on top of that, the crisis around and the total fatalities and what places are seeing the worst impacts of this crisis. So, and then we slice it by county level. For example, using this map, you can see that a quarter of fatalities are happening in 50 counties. So we can start to think about, how we're telling the story as advocates, you all as stakeholders, in order to better understand, where the problems are and be able to really emphasize, where there's a need for change. We're also looking at the inversion. So where are things going well? So looking at, places with high density but low crash rates, for example, or low density and low crash rates. We want to be able to sort of pull communities up and be able to see where people are making it work, where communities are making their roadways more safe. And we're looking at a community level, municipality level. Here you see the census tract level. So really encourage you all to take a look at that, those maps, and to see where your place or space lies on it. A lot of you have heard the reference to the National Roadway Safety Strategy. This is the big strategy that was released over a year ago, where the department declared zero as our goal, as our vision. It did adopt the safe system approach, which has been referenced several times in the conversation, which has those 5 components around safer people, safer roads, safer speeds, safer vehicles, and post-crash care, which really is a framework in order for us to organize our efforts and to create those redundancies and proactively create safer right-of-ways for people, both inside vehicles and outside, and particularly thinking about vulnerable road users, people walking, biking, and rolling, as we see that disproportionate impact on those people, as well as the particular communities they may be in. US DOT identified specific actions that it would be taking, and that was outlined in the strategy. And then in addition to that, and you've heard reference to it, we did have the call to action, which the campaign was officially launched recently. So some of the major milestones in the last year, and we're really trying to do our best to make sure we're communicating clearly. We have a dashboard on the National Roadway Safety Strategy implementation webpage where you can track. That's also where you can find the map that I shared. And we also have released a progress report very recently in order to be able to discern what milestones we're reaching and what work we have left to do. So you can see a few of these here that are very much clearly in line with, supporting people biking, safe streets and roads for all, which I'll talk about in a moment. When Sherry showed that the table, I'll say that Safe Streets and Roads for All had the most dollar signs going down the column across the rows, meaning that it really is a program that is very much open and ready to be utilized to improve bicycling and networks and safety around that, So certainly going to talk about that a little bit more. And then, of course, you see the vulnerable road user safety assessment, which Sherry talked about as well, and complete streets. These are all ways that we're organizing around making places better for biking. I wanted to just take a moment to describe the call to action. This is our recognition that we can't go it alone, that the transportation system is large, complex, diverse, and that there are a lot of stakeholders at play on our roadways. And so while US DOT has a role to play, the states, regional, local level governments, tribal governments, we're also looking at industry partners. We're looking at other stakeholders, not only our traditional advocates, but also broadening, who is a part of the conversation about making roadways more safe. So we did launch with, around 50 first movers. And we did, through that, we were able to share some of the specific actions that these stakeholders are planning to take in the next 1 to 2 years. We are looking for specific actions that respond to the urgency of the crisis that we see on our roadways, and things that will help us bend that curve, which we know there are things that in the short term we can do to save lives. So the call to action really is to catalyze the movement and also to provide leadership to others on what sorts of actions they can be taking. We did, out of all of our call to action commitments, we received 38% were focused on vulnerable road users, including, we of course have already thanked the League of American Bicyclists, but the action that they're taking is really critical in that, we have this once in a generational opportunity with the investment that's going to be made through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And again, some of these programs that have been particularly designed to address vulnerable road users, including people biking, people walking, biking, rolling. And so it's really this pivotal moment where we can direct those funds in ways that could change the way we experience the roadway for years and years to come. So definitely grateful for the partnership with the League of American Bicyclists, and for others, I'm sure, who are in this room virtually or in person, who have been a part of this process. Again, just wanted to take the last few minutes that I have to really plug Safe Streets and Roads for All. This is a very important program. I know many of you have heard of it. Just want to make sure there's not a person in the room that has not or is unfamiliar with what it is and how they can harness its power. This is $5 billion over 5 years in discretionary grant funding. We did just announce awards, 510 awards over a month ago. And, these awards are to support communities for planning and for implementation to make their roadways safer. This program is also unique in that it sends money directly to local governments, subdivisions of states, metropolitan planning organizations, federally recognized tribes, and other, combinations or partnerships of those. So we're very excited about the opportunity to support that kind of change on the ground in places across the country. You can see sort of a geographic dispersion of where the first round of funding has gone. Over 800 million was awarded, as was mentioned. And I should say that is compromising over half the population of the United States in planning awards. So what we're looking at is really a transformation in the coming years of communities at the local level having having those plans in place, which will give them a tremendous tool to be able to access that laundry list that Sherry shared of funding that is available. When you have that planning process, then you'll be able to really access and understand where are my major problems and where can we address them? How can we address them? What are the effective strategies? Everyone's been part of this process. So you've had a community engagement process. There's a potential, and you've incorporated the equity analysis. So you can really start to be prepared to make changes that are going to be impactful on the roadway. In addition, I just wanted to share a couple of examples, and I'll be quick on some of the implementation grants that we were able to award in this last round. For example, in Atlanta, Georgia, you can see we're going to be able to increase, the pedestrian protected bikes and pedestrian facilities across the city. This is 4.25 miles of roadways that will be impacted, and it's really going to be able to sort of connect a few different places, particularly the Beltline Trail to the Atlanta downtown area. As well as looking at, an example in Seattle where we're funding the high impact strategies on arterial roads, which will be impacting the southern neighborhood in Seattle or southeast rather of SoDo. And this is really 4 miles of protected bike lanes, 1.5 miles of new sidewalks, et cetera. Very excited about the immediate change over the course of the implementation grant that we will be able to see on those roadways. And then, another example is in Providence, Rhode Island, where they'll be able to connect various trails that already exist that are urban trails throughout the city, and really be able to make those connections for first mile, last mile, and create those networks that are so critical for people to get places safely. So we're excited that Safe Streets and Roads for All is able to support this kind of programming. I will just sort of pitch that we will be releasing the notice of funding opportunities soon. So for folks to be aware and ready to join us for informational webinars and information on that. I think there's a lot of great opportunities within Safe Streets and Roads for All on the planning side, everything from developing your comprehensive safety action plan to doing tactical urbanism or quick builds or demonstration projects that support that planning process, to the sort of implementation process at the end where we can see those permanent changes to our roadways. So looking forward to the next round. And again, thank you all for supporting all of this work and being a part of it. And really, again, a critical need for everyone to spread the word and be part of that process and make sure that we're all sort of pitching this and getting great projects on the ground while we have this opportunity. So thanks, Bill. I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emily. Yeah, wow. We will be keeping our eyes out for that. We have a lot. We've had for that funding opportunity. Thanks so much to all of the panel today for, we're so excited to be working with you. Thank you for the work you're doing. And our partnership really will become, as you say, bring these things to life on the ground. I know we have sessions that are going to start in about 20 minutes. So I want to make a plug for everybody, look at your schedule, get some coffee, go to the breakout session, next sessions. And then the final closing for today, we'll have a plenary back all together again at 5 p.m. But yeah, again, huge thanks. I know this is virtual and you can't hear the applause, but we're all very, very thankful for your work, and we'll be keeping our eye out for all of these. And I know we've had a lot of requests for the slides, so we'll make sure that get the approvals needed and to be able to share all that and with all of you on the Whova app after the summit at some point. Thanks a lot. All right, and on to the next sessions. Take care.